Madam, please begin. We are live.
Yeah, sure.
Archana ma'am. Hello, Archana ma'am. We are live now.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is our pleasure to have with us Dr. Leena Patel. She is AGM at Medical Writing Division of CBCC Global. She has a vast experience of total 15 years, including academic as well as industrial experience. She did her B.Pharm and M.Pharm in pharmacology from K. Bipar, Gandhinagar, after which she joined as a faculty at Charuset Institute of Pharmacy, and she was actively involved in research and also completed her PhD during that time. After which she chose the direction of medical writing at Sunshine Heart Institute at Hyderabad. Since then, she has found her interest and success in this field of medical writing. As medical writing is emerging as a new career option for pharmacy professionals, I would request Leena to share her views about the same with our students. Over to you, Leena.
Thank you, Archana, for the nice introduction. So I would say that I'll briefly introduce myself as a medical writing professional, and I'm leading the team of scientific writing, more specifically at CBCC Global Research. So I'll be introducing the term scientific writing, medical writing, and all other, writing related terms today in this webinar. And we'll try to cover some basic aspects. So it will include, I'll be introducing what medical writing is all about, what are the different types of medical writing, where medical writers are employed currently, and what are the different professional organizations where you can refer to and read or more information about this profession and writing deliverables. So beginning with this, so in a broad sense, medical writing is writing for the healthcare and life science industry. So when we say healthcare, it is not just about medicine. It does include veterinary science. It does include agriculture science also. So medical writing writers write for both healthcare, for the medicine as well as agriculture and veterinary science. So as a discipline, medical writing caters for a variety of audiences, from regulatory experts, healthcare professional to the lay people as well. and it can be broadly divided into medical communication writing and regulatory writing, although there exists overlap between both of these several times. So before I go ahead with the remaining slides, Archana, can I know the background of the audience, like whether they are BPharm, MPharm, PhD, who all are them? So accordingly, I'll
Yes, mostly all the MPharm students as well as our faculty, and also there are BPharm students.
great to know. Yeah.
Faculty are also
Yeah, sure. So basically, since you are all pharma, having pharma background, so you all may be knowing the drug discovery process and what is the drug product life cycle, right? So before I begin with the types, I thought let me introduce in a way that it would be more visible for you to understand. So if you look at the drug discovery process, it takes around 15 to 20 years for a drug to come into the market from a lab scale. So when it is in lab scale and under clinical studies, there are different types of documents which are required to be submitted to the regulatory authorities. Now, these regulatory authorities are none other than the licensing authorities. For example, you might have heard like US FDA or EMEA, or say, for India, it may be CDSCO or DCGI, right? So once the data of clinical studies are submitted to these regulatory authorities, they provide us the approval for the marketing. So the story doesn't end here, right? Even after the approval of the drug, we need to get that information available with the doctors, clinician, who are the prescriber of this medicine, right? In such a way that they treat the right patient with right drug. They can monitor it. I mean, the entire drug product life cycle is from lab to the patient safety. So now you understand there are two parts of medical writing, two types basically. One is a regulatory writing, where up to the regulatory approval, all the documents are written. All those are classified under regulatory writing. And another part, even after the regulatory approval, when it comes to communicating the data of clinical studies or preclinical study to the audiences like clinicians or nurses or who are into healthcare practice, or even the patients, communication to them is called medical communication. Okay, so popularly it is known as madcoms. You will be knowing this, I mean, frequently hearing this term madcoms. It is nothing but medical communication writing. So I hope I'm able to make you understand the basic difference, like something which is written for the regulatory agencies is regulatory writing, and something which is written for the audience like clinicians, patients, and all other lay persons is called medical communication writing. So now let's begin with the slides. So these are all different types of medical communication and regulatory medical writing deliverables, like promotional material, patient education material. So many of you might have seen medical representative visiting the doctors, and they might be showing you some kind of a digital aid, or nowadays it is a digital aid. Earlier it used to be like a leave behind literature, a small chart or a paper which is left at the doctor's desk. So they are all called promotional material, patient education material. Sometimes when patients are undergoing the treatment, they need to be informed about, say, the side effects of the certain medications, or they need to be informed about what all they should take, what all they should not take during the treatment. So patient education material, medical journalism, teaching material for physicians and other specialist audiences. This is something like continuous education material for doctors or sales representative, which is popularly known as CME. Publications like normally the manuscripts, I think all postgraduate students are well aware of the publications. Product labels, PIs, their patient narratives, newsletters, slide kits, conference abstract, posters, reports, CSRs, PSURs, GSURs. So I'll be briefing you a little detail about all of this in the later slides. But this is just a brief of, just names of all the deliverables which are covered under the medical writing. So for your information, I belong to the medical communication writing. I have been into this field for more than now 10 years after leaving my academic job. So let's begin with the medical communication first. So getting a drug from the laboratory through all of the necessary clinical trials and regulatory administration represent a major challenge for a pharmaceutical company. Developing a drug can take up to 15 years as we discussed earlier, and the cost may be somewhere into billions dollars. So to get doctors to prescribe the medicine, we need to tell them about it, which usually involves marketing and communication activities. Now, which ensures that doctors are well informed about a new medicine and it is appropriately monitored, and with the ultimate goal of safety and improving the health of thousands of people. So what is covered under medcoms? So medical communication agencies have their roots in medical education and traditionally produce materials such as journal manuscripts for peer review, learning resources, slide kits, posters, presentation for conferences, etc. So medical communication agencies may also touch on media materials at the public relations end of the spectrum, and on the other hand, on the commercial end of the spectrum, also they provide the services. So medcom agencies also advise the pharmaceutical industry on how best to educate and inform their customers about the benefits and risk of therapy using clinical and economic data. So here the customers or end users will be doctors, nurses, hospital managers, pharmacists, as well as the patients. So example of medical communication writing or deliverable includes journal manuscripts for peer reviews, slide kits, posters, presentations for conferences, brochure, leaflets, and animation. So I would like to give you understanding here that, for example, a company is developing a molecule, right, which may be, say, a new molecular target, a new class of agent. So how it is overall plan, I'm just giving you idea like how a product cycle goes there. So basically, initially they are doing some preclinical studies, right? Based on the preclinical data, they are developing the clinical study, or the protocol, or overall the clinical program is designed. Now, what is the current industry practice is that they develop a publication plan, or in another terms, medical communication plan. So what is it? So whenever in this communication plan or publication plan, they will have planning of the data which will be put in the public. For example, when the preclinical data or preclinical studies are done, they are published, right? When the clinical studies are done, one side they will be submitting it to the regulatory authorities, another side they will be presenting the data. Mainly first they are presenting into the conferences, main conferences. If it is a say cardiovascular therapeutic area, then they may be presenting into TCT or European Society meeting, American Society meetings, and then subsequently they will make that data available in terms of publications or manuscripts, right? So by the time the regulatory approvals occurs, the data is already available in the public in the form of publications. The end subscribers, prescribers rather, clinicians are also made aware of the new therapies and their use, right? So the medical communication also starts the day it is in the preclinical studies. Okay, so it's an entire planning. It is not like that once it is approved, then it is published. It's not like that. Okay, so just wanted to give you understanding of the process. Next, that was about medical communication. So medical communication is basically a kind of academic writing. Okay. Now comes the regulatory writing. So regulatory writing is that which is typically carried out for regulatory compliances. The role of the regulatory writer is to prepare the formal and scientific documents that pharmaceutical companies need during the development of a drug for regulatory compliance. They typically create large text of firm conducting drug trials. Today, the ethical constraints for all trials are so tight that there are countless guidelines covering this form of writing, and these guidelines ensure that the documents adhere to the international, ICH and GCP guidelines. Probably you might be knowing, or some of you might be come to know later in your curriculum. Medical writers at pharmaceutical companies write several regulatory documents for submission to various global regulatory agencies like EMA or US FDA. Hence, regulatory writers play an important role in helping to get new drugs to market in improving patient care. So now comes the difference between the regulatory and MedCom writing. So as an MPharm, BPharm, or whosoever is wanted to switch their career or interested in the medical writing, need to understand what is the difference between these two, right? So there may be some inherent skills which are required for regulatory writing and medical communication writing. So regulatory writing requires a different style compared to MedCom writing. Regulatory writers have to develop documents according to the standard templates and requirements mandated by regulatory authorities, which are mainly in line with the GCP and other specific guidelines. This style of medical writing requires meticulous crafting and attention to detail to ensure that medical and scientific evidence is presented in a comprehensive, standardized, and rigorous manner. Individual documents may be concise and standalone, but may also form part of a larger submission. So working within the regulatory writing arena can sometimes be viewed as being more formulaic in style than MedCom writing. However, medical communication must necessarily focus on the key messages and findings. Regulatory submission must be a complete record of years of development work. So to give you an idea about this point is that, see, a drug undergoes number of clinical programs. That clinical trial may be carried out over say 5-10 years, right? Now, when there is a publication of these trials, it took 10 years to do that trial, but a publication allows only 6,000 words at the max to publish the findings of this clinical trial. So basically, MedCom is to the point publication of the key messages. Whereas in the regulatory writing, when the data of this trial is submitted to the regulatory agency, it includes all the details, including if a single adverse event is encountered in a patient, when did it occur, how did it occur, how did it was resolved, what was the ultimate outcome, everything needs to be described as a part of the CSR or clinical stability report, which comes under the regulatory writing. Whereas under the medical communication, when it is published, key message is given more importance, right? So a clinical program might be having multiple publications out from one trial. Okay, so now this represents a challenge for the writer, how to craft a large body of data into a logical and understandable story while maintaining the transparency of potential risk and limitation. So again, types of regulatory documents, as I said, for medical communication, it's like slides for conferences or workshops or medical manuscripts, leave behind literatures or CME material. For regulatory documents, I'll be giving you the overview of all these documents. So regulatory writers prepare a variety of documents that are required during the drug development process. And typically, they will lead the writing of these documents. I mean, regulatory writer lead the writing of these documents with input from team members And this team member may be a study clinician, statistician, drug safety representative, or an expert from a regulatory affairs. So during the development phase of the clinical trial or drug discovery, clinical study protocols are required. So I'll briefly introduce what the clinical study protocols are. So in order to conduct a clinical study, a protocol is required. A clinical study protocol describes in detail all of the processes, assessments, and requirements for that study to run smoothly. The protocol also includes a description of which statistical analysis will be performed with specific details usually defined in a separate statistical analysis plan. Then comes the informed consent form. So before any patient or participants are recruited in the study, they need to provide the informed consent for their enrollment. And they are also need to be informed that they can refrain or they can withdraw their consent at any time during the trial. Clinical study reports. A clinical study report is prepared at the end of the study and presents a complete record of the methods and results obtained. Data presented in CSR are the results of the analysis that were predefined in the study protocol and statistical analysis plan. So you are reading here that it is prepared at the end of the study, but practically it is not the case. Some part of the CSR is all prepared in advance, like whenever the study is ongoing. So it totally depends on the agency. Then comes the investigator brochure. So the person responsible for conducting a study at a particular site is referred to as the investigator, and an investigator brochure details all known information to date on a study drug and is distributed to those who are involved in conducting the study. So this IB acts as a valuable resource for an investigator when making informed decision on the benefit and risk associated with a study drug. Okay. So the pharmaceutical company that markets the drug being investigated should review the available information annually and if necessary, initiate an update to the existing IB. And regulatory writers may prepare either the initial IB or subsequent updates. Drug safety and pharmacovigilance documents. So during the development of a new drug following the marketing approval, safety is closely monitored, which necessitates the production of specific documents reporting on the safety of the drug. These includes developmental safety update reports, which are popularly known as DSURs, and periodic safety update reports, which are usually prepared after the drug marketing, and risk management plans. So these were the documents which were prepared during the trials. Now comes the submission documents. So trial is completed. Now the time is for submission to the regulatory agency. So in order for a drug to be marketed for the first time or in a new disease area, approval must be obtained from drug licensing authorities. So pharmaceutical companies compile a dossier of all of the available data that have been collected during the study for a potential new treatment. So now from 2013, the CTD has been mandatory for all the companies or even the academicians who are filing their product, and which has been a mandate for European, Japanese, or US agencies. So regulatory medical writers are most often involved in writing CSRs, clinical summaries, clinical overviews, and preparing non-clinical components of the submission documents as well. So the clinical summaries are nothing but the factual narrative of all the clinical information available in the CTD, which includes data presented in CSRs, information obtained from any pooled analysis and post-marketing data for products. And the clinical overview is, it is intended to provide a critical analysis of the clinical data in the CTD. And it factually summarizes the data provided in the clinical summary documents, presenting clear conclusion and implication, as well as comprehensive risk-benefit analysis. So these are the different documents which falls under the regulatory writing arena. Now comes then an important question: who requires medical writers, or where these medical writers are employed? Okay, so medical writers mostly work in pharmaceutical industry. However, there are many other settings in which medical writers are employed. So these includes pharmaceutical healthcare product companies, including medical devices companies. So I hope that you have understanding of medical devices. So your stethoscope, your syringes, or BP measuring instrument, or ECG machine, all this comes under medical device. And these medical device company do need to write some regulatory documents as well as the publications. So they do employ medical writers. Contract research organizations and business or knowledge process outsourcing companies, which are known as BPOs or KPOs, they also recruit medical writers. Then again, scientific content and healthcare communication companies, which are functional service providers, they do employ medical writers. Media and publishing companies like medical journals or like Elsevier or Springer Nature, they do employ medical writers for their routine work. So this is where they are employed. So let's see, why join a medcom agency. So first we'll be having idea like why do we join medical communication agency. So when it comes to getting a broad writing experience, a medcom agency is a good place to start your career. So here what is done, like one day you will be writing a highly technical document and using all of your scientific and research skill. It may happen then the next day you will be you will become creative to summarize the entire document in one diagram. Okay, so some people prefer the more scientific educational element of a job and happy to write nothing but the technical manuscripts and may focus very specifically on a narrow therapeutic field, whereas other enjoy the challenge of a new therapies area every week. So it depends, like in a pharmaceutical companies who have a product which are targeted for a particular area. So if you choose to join those companies, you will be having exposure to that particular therapeutic area. In contrast, when you join a medical communication agencies or CROs where the services are provided, you will have to cater whatever you are getting as a client, I mean as a CRO. So there you get to work in different therapeutic areas as well, right? So other people prefer the more creative element of writing a range of materials or prefer to be out of the office talking to the clients. Next. So these are the different roles. So what I'm giving you is not the only one. There are different roles, but I'm giving you the basic understanding of all of this. So there may be account manager, there may be medical editor, there may be editorial project manager or medical writer. So what all these role defined as? So a medical writer's job is to write high quality scientific copy for the wide range of materials that medical communication agency produces. Attending conferences and advisory board and standalone meeting is a large part of agency's life. So if you like traveling, this is a definite part for you. So I would like to give some background over here. So for example, if you are working in a pharma company or agency and then you get a project where you have to cover the data of that particular product is presented at a conference. So then a medical writer has to cover the entire conference, like how it was presented, what was the ultimate outcome of the study and all. They will be attending the conferences and recording what was covered there. Advisory board meetings are nothing but of like a company has a product and they want to sensitize the clinician in that particular area. For example, there is a stent, cardiovascular stent, and the company producing that stent wants to conduct a continuous medical education or an advisory board meeting. So they will arrange in India, for example, they will arrange a meeting. Maybe nowadays it is online meeting, but earlier it used to be a physical meeting wherein they will gather, arrange all the clinicians over there and discuss accordingly about the product, right? So you have to, medical writer has to attend that meeting, record the minutes of meeting, and based on their discussion, they will be developing the publication out of the meeting. So there are writers who are very fond of these kind of writing, attending meetings, traveling, and developing the document based out of it. So it depends. Like, then comes the medical editing. So many agencies combine the role of writing and editing. In such agency, a medical writer is not only expected to produce original article, but also to be able to edit other writers' work. So medical editors, they basically edit, they don't write, they edit the manuscripts. So checking it for scientific accuracy, grammatical and editorial errors. Some agencies split this role, employing both medical writers and editors. In such agencies, medical editors tend to have a wider function, adding proofreading and print production skills to their editing role. So in terms of entering an agency as a trainee, agencies more commonly recruit writers than editors. So that you need to take into consideration. Then comes the account or project management. An account or project management team is responsible for making sure that projects are delivered on time and on budget. This role includes tasks such as preparing cost estimates, tracking projects, liaising with internal team members and external suppliers, negotiating with clients, and preparing invoices. So account managers often have a scientific background, but it is not essential many times. Event management. So all of you must be knowing conferences and advise conferences, especially because you are into academics. So there are agencies which support all these activities, like all the logistics and technical aspects of event management. So medical writers are employed there as well. So what are the entry requirements for medical communication? So a postgraduate or PhD in life science or pharmacy is usual entry requirement for a medical writer joining the medical communication agency. And many of them have postdoc experience. So if you have a science degree or other healthcare, so probably all of you are having the pharmacy degree, which will make you eligible for this profile. But keep in mind that your competitors would be the nursing postgraduates mainly, or physiotherapy, or sometimes the medical doctors as well. So now comes after medical communication, let's discuss about the regulatory writing. So what would be your role in the regulatory writing? So the main role will be, of course, involve the writing of regulatory documents, and other responsibility will depend on your employer. For example, if you work in a specialist medical writing company, you will work directly with the clients, and it will be your documents will be reviewed by an expert, where you have to address their comments and revert back. So who will I work with? So regulatory writers rarely work in isolation, and they usually work as a part of cross-functional team, which can include clinicians, statisticians, regulatory affair personnel, pharmacovigilance personnel, and other specialized functional lines. So depending on your employer and the client, teams may also be global and include high-level regulatory and clinical personnel. Now comes, so we understood what is regulatory and medical writing. We saw what are the different roles within industry and who employs them. Now, if you decide to choose the career, there are some essential skills which are required to be a good medical writer. So it is the person should have established should be an established scientist. So a doctorate and postdoc experience will be an added advantage. Obviously, they do recruit postgraduates and graduates also sometimes as a junior writer. But the basic requirement is a science degree. Someone who enjoys writing, then you are the type of person who, so if you have enjoyed writing your own thesis or your own seminar, then probably you are best fit for the medical writing profile. Someone who is a good listener. See, in academia, uh, your opinion about your research area was valued in medcoms. Although you will be expected to have a good knowledge of numerous therapeutic areas, but your opinion may not be asked for. So you will be required to listen to the client and the medical expert and to communicate their opinions, but you need not to provide your own opinion. Then again, excellent research skills. You will be expected to learn numerous new clinical fields very quickly. Although it is always nice to get a project that is related to your research background, but this does not happen very often. For example, your existing knowledge may be in the, say, diabetology or endocrinology, but you may be expected to become an expert into psychiatry, right? So you might have done your post graduation in, say respiratory area, but then you are given the role in endocrinology. It happens. So this may seem like a daunting task initially, but gradually you will be acquainted to the same. So again, attention, someone with having attention to detail. So pedantic is also a good skill. Should be comfortable, a writer should be comfortable with the statistics. So you don't have to be an expert in the statistics, but presenting data and making them easy for doctors to understand will be part of your daily job. Medical statistics are a far cry from the odd t-tests you had to do for your doctorate, and whereas you won't be expected to number crunch. You will have, but see, basically you have to produce evidence-based argument based on clinical data. A basic understanding of the analysis used in the clinical trial will be essential, and you should find that you quickly learn various statistic concepts that are commonly used in the clinical research. So the last expertise is you should be thick-skinned. You will be surprised, but it may seem like a step backwards, going from being a respected scientist to being a trainee and learning to be a writer will be tough to begin with. This is just because you are putting, enormous effort to prepare a document or a manuscript, and then your senior writer will be giving, say, 50 comments on a single page. Right. So you need to be thick-skinned that time. You need to understand the critical comments and address those comments accordingly. So in nutshell, domain knowledge is required. We need to know the audience. Writing skills is required. Consistency and security of data using stringent document management system is expected from the writers. Getting updated with the information is also required. Clarity within the ideas, clarity for ideas, clarity for presenting the idea is really very much necessary in writing. Literature search skills are also necessary. Writer need to give unbiased opinion about the results. In addition to this writing skill, interpersonal skills are all interpersonal skills and project management skills are also very much appreciated from the writers. So that was about medical communication writing because it's a kind of academic writing. Now, what makes a good regulatory writer? Again, more or less the characteristics are the same, like excellent attention to detail, good communication skills, the ability to work independently and as a part of a team, computer literacy, time management, the ability to quickly get into grips with new therapy areas, maybe multitasking, because you may be expected to manage several projects at the same time. It is not necessary that someone is writing protocol is not involved in the CSR. It may happen that a writer is writing for 3 or 4 CSR at a time. The most important attribute for any medical writer is the ability to accept critique positively. No matter how experienced you are, your work is going to be reviewed by the experts in the field. So that's all about, right, what are the skills required from the medical writer. Now comes when you go for the medical writing interviews, nowadays, medical writing test is a mandate. So if you are going for an interview for a say medical medcom profile, then the writing test might include writing an abstract for a poster or a manuscript. So they will be giving you manuscript from which they might have removed the abstract, right? The blank redacted manuscript, and you have to prepare an abstract. Or they may be giving you 3-4 original articles for a product, and they may be asking you to write say 500 words or 1000 words mini review based on those papers. They may be asking you to write an article based out of a conference report or a 15 or 20 minutes of meeting. You have to listen and write based on that. Okay, so this could be the part of writing test for medcom profile. So keep in mind, whatever the task is, what they will look for is attention to detail. So try to avoid spelling mistakes and grammatical errors when you are going for a medcom interview. Look into the structure and flow of the content. So provide a well-structured document with a logical flow of ideas. Make it very simple. So we don't have to overcomplicate. We don't look for the overcomplicated document, but what we look for is how simple you can present your idea. So if you want to test yourself, I had given this example here. Like this is a write-up from a manuscript, clinical manuscript, where there are some mistakes which you can identify. I think I'll skip this slides for now. This is an example for a regulatory writing testing. So there comes the professional organization in the field of medical writing. So like you can go back to the websites of these organizations and look for more details. There may be some courses run by them, or there may be some guidelines on their website. So you can refer to those guidelines before going for an interview. So some of these are like European Medical Writers Association, American Medical Writers Association, Council of Science Editors, World Association of Medical Editors, European Association of Scientific Editors, the boards of editors in the life sciences, the international. So these bells in the medical communication agencies, when there is a profile of editors, then bell certification is an additional advantage. Then comes the ISMAP, which is the International Society for Medical Publication Professional. It is again for the medcom writing. So this organization publishes different guidelines for developing manuscript based on the study type. For preclinical, there is a different guideline. For clinical manuscript, even within the clinical manuscript, for a randomized trial, different guidelines. For parallel trial, different guidelines. For a diagnostic trial, there are different guidelines. So this ISMAP website is having details of all this thing. In addition to this, someone who is interested into medcom writing should also log on to this Equator network, which has list of all these guidelines. Again, Society for Technical Communication and International Science Writers Association. So these are some of the professional organization. You can log on to their website and read more about it. So thank you all for the patient listening. Now, let me know if you have any questions here.
Thank you, Lima. It was exactly what I wanted the students to know, covered perfectly. There are a few questions.
Yeah.
So one of the student is asking, is there any Indian Medical Writers Association?
See, formally, like other countries, no, not now, but there are some groups like India Medcom Working Group on LinkedIn. Earlier, it used to be an Indian Medical Writers Association, but as far as my knowledge goes right now, it is not that functional. But yes, there is a team under ISCR, Indian Society of Clinical Research. There are different divisions, and under which there is a division for medical writing, which covers both regulatory writing and scientific writing. So they are doing different activities under ISCR forum.
So it is a government body.
ISCR is not exactly the government body. It's a kind of a non-profit organization where all these professionals come under one roof for India.
Okay.
And yes, some of the office holders, maybe ex-government officials, or maybe like holding very good position at top 10 pharma companies.
Okay. Another question is, what is the salary scale? Any rough range for that?
So I shouldn't be commenting on it over this public platform. But it depends on the skill of the writer, and it is a very respected job. It may be some for a fresher MPharm, the writing scale may be equivalent to the other profile, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question is there. Yes, what are the prospects for progression in the field? Means how, I think what they asking is how much you can get up to which level and how many.
Okay, so if I understand it correctly, what is the growth potential in the medical writing, right?
Yes. Yes.
So say for example, as a fresher postgraduate, if you join as a medical writer, you will be joining as a trainee, or as for doing your internship as a junior medical writer. Then you will be promoted as a senior medical writer. Then maybe account holder. So take two different scenarios. If you are in an agency, how agencies work for Medcom. So it's like you'll be joining as a junior writer, senior writer, then a manager. Manager will be managing junior writers, senior writers. The manager will be managing one account. Account means for an agency, there would be pharma companies who will be their clients. So probably you will be managing one account, one pharma company. Then when you progress, you will be managing two companies. Then again, you will be a director, senior manager, AGM to director. So the growth potential is enormous. And again, in terms of technical skills also, like you will be joining a team of abstract writing. Later on, you will be joining the team of manuscript writing, conferences, ad boards. So, learning never ends. Even today also, after 10, 12 years being into writing, I am not expert at all the documents. So it's like that. In terms of regulatory writing, there are different profiles, like someone may be writing like protocols, maybe someone is expert at CSR, someone may be expert at ECTD, someone may be submission writer, or someone may be, gateway expert, electronic gateway, which are there for submission to the regulatory agencies. So there is enormous potential to grow as well. And it's not like that. See, you will be entering with some basic technical understanding. Then these companies and agency would be providing you on the job training. Not only technically, there would be some interpersonal skills. There would be some training programs that you will be undergoing. So as far as my experience go, they provide you with a lot of, potential to grow personally as well as professionally. Hope I have addressed the question.
Yes. Another question is, are there a good number of companies located in Gujarat who are there in the medical writing field?
So if you talk about Gujarat, see, there are pharma companies and their production units are there in Gujarat, right? So they do employ medical writers over there, like Zydus, Cadila, Torrent, Troika. All of they have their regulatory writers. But in terms of Madcom writing, definitely there is a limited scope within Gujarat. But yes, see, Madcom writing is something which has come up very recently in India. Uh, Even for the Indian pharma companies, previously they didn't used to publish so much, but now there is a trend towards publishing. And that is why the pharma companies have also started outsourcing, because they cannot afford recruiting scientific writers their own. Because see what happens, scientific writers, most of the times who are in the Madcom, who are the independent writers, are holding the PhD degrees. And their expectations in terms of skills and financial aspects are also very high. So these companies then outsource it to the medical communication agencies. They outsource their work. So there are some organizations, there are some companies in Gujarat which are outsourcing it to the CROs. So you will need to see, you log on to the websites of that particular CRO and try to see if they are offering this medical writing service or not.
Lina, there is one more question.
Hmm.
Is there any scope for part-time medical writer? Probably this is asked by someone who is doing full-time PhD.
Okay, so yes, definitely. There is a scope to work as a freelancer. But I would, if you ask me personally, I would suggest initially for some years you work as a full-time employee, or work, get some experience, and then you do your freelancing. If you say about part-time, there are some agencies which provide the work based on the projects. Like, you have to work on a project basis. So they may be calling it as a contractual work. Like, they will be contracting with the writer, say 4 hours per day, or say 10 or 20 hours per week accordingly. So it depends. So yes, there is an opportunity. There are in fact a lot of opportunity to be freelancer or part-time writer. But yes, initially you need to get the break, get experience, and then you can do your own.
No more questions. Thank you very much, Lina. It was, I came to know that it's a very vast field.
Yes.
Yeah, what idea I was having, it is much more than that. So it must be very informative for the students also. And lot of scope is there. So someone who is interested, they can definitely brush up their skills, which you mentioned, and they can get
Especially for the PhD students, like, even when I was doing my PhD, I didn't know about all this thing, right? But gradually, when I moved out of Gujarat and entered in the field, then I came to know, and then I started educating, going back to the academics, and informing the academicians also that there exists a profile, someone who is a very scholar student who loves to read and write and comprehend. The medical communication job, the person would really enjoy. So it depends, like, individual interest.
right. So thank you very much, Dr. Lina
Thank you.
Patel. Keep coming and keep motivating our students. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much for providing me this opportunity for interacting with the students. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.